Hello, everyone. So I hit 10,000 subscribers on YouTube yesterday, which it's just another number, really, isn't it? But whatever. It's a nice round milestone. So I've decided to do a little question and answer video just as a little extra before I get back to whatever else it is I do. An anonymous user asks, do you think with the growing popularity of yourself, H-Bomber, Contra and Tomavella and others, you might be able to rival the skeptic community in popularity? Well, yes. Yeah. In a lot of cases, we already do. I mean, there are bigger channels than any of those names there that put out similar content to us. And there are a lot of skeptic channels that aren't doing so well recently. But even the biggest skeptic channels, remember, their sub numbers are a bit of a con. Like if you look at the Amazing Atheist, say he's got 1 million subscribers, but he doesn't get 1 million views on his videos, does he? It's just their channels have been around for a lot longer than us, so they've accrued a lot of dead subscribers. Not literally dead, although I guess a few of them are probably dead. At least one of my subscribers has probably died. A bit morbid. But yeah, if you look on view counts, like, we're getting there. Plus, we're going to benefit from the political swing over the course of Trump's term in office, or terms in office if we live in the dark timeline. You know, broadly, there's always a swing of the moderates away from whatever the politics of the American president are over the course of his term. So, in short, yes. Bandit asks, what do you think led to a rise in subs so fast? I remember finding you completely by fluke after the Leafy video, and seeing this change is bizarre. Well, thank you, Bandit, for the possibly insulting question there. I don't really know either. My channel's been growing a lot faster than some other channels that are similar to mine but better. So I don't really know what's going on, to be perfectly honest. I've got a lot of very helpful shoutouts by said people who are better than me. So thanks a lot for those. It's probably just all of those and not anything that I've actually done. An anonymous user asks, what steps do you do to ensure your videos are quality? Well, I would never call my videos quality, but I put this question in here because I want to mention something about my last video I put out. So that video about Sargon's This Week in Stupid series, in the writing process of that one, I made a really big error. I misheard something that Sargon said and then accused him of something that wasn't true and didn't notice. And I listened to the audio through, didn't notice it. And it was at the end of the editing process that I actually noticed, oh wait, hang on, I've made a mistake there. But it's only because I did so many checks for mistakes like that I caught it and could cut it out. You can't do that if you're just pumping out one of those videos every day. Because, of course, Sargon can make 4 of those videos in the time it takes me to fact check one of them. And, of course, we all make mistakes. So that's how mistakes get through. If you just get content out as quickly as possible, then you are going to make mistakes. So I guess I'd say, even though I don't think my videos are very good anyway, taking my time with them. How do you define your political views? Asks someone else who's anonymous. No one sent in names with these. I don't want you to label yourself as anything. I just want to understand your ideology. Sorry if this is a bad, boring question. It's not a bad or boring question. In fact, I got this question more than anything else. So I should... I got like 10 people asking me this. So broadly, I don't use political labels for things. Just because I personally find them a bit unhelpful. When pushed, I'll call myself an anti-capitalist. But even that's a bit of a dodge, really. And then if you push me even further than that, I'll probably say I'm a socialist. But I should explain. When you say socialist to 2 different people, one of them will think of a, wonderful egalitarian Star Trek utopia, and the other one will think of Stalin putting them in a gulag. So this is why I sort of find these labels sort of unhelpful. The reason I go to anti-capitalist first is because I think there's a lot of problems with capitalism, and I think it's not getting a proper critique, or it's never questioned by anyone who's in power in the West. And it needs to be. You know, if you have only two political parties in the country that can ever get into power, and the only way they can get into power is by never ever saying anything questioning of capitalism, then that leads to a lot of problems, especially considering there are sort of systemic inherent problems with capitalism, and they never get dealt with just because there's nobody on the political stage who's, you know, allowed to deal with them. And to people who automatically jump to the defense of capitalism, which I understand, you know, somebody says capitalism's bad, they say, well, what would you replace it with? What's better? You know, this has never worked out, that's never worked out, what are you going to do? It's the best thing we've ever had, etc. I think that sort of misses the point. Even if you think capitalism is sort of the end goal of progress in, you know, human society, it's still a flawed system, and it still needs critiquing. I think you should welcome the critique, because it helps it get better. Even within capitalism, it's good to criticize capitalism. Now, one of the reasons I think it's important to criticize capitalism is it's taken the old sort of power dynamic that's been there throughout human history, which is just, you know, the rich ruling over the poor, the powerful ruling over the less powerful, and it's made it global. So now you can live in the West in relative luxury, and some poor bastard in China has to live basically as a slave to produce the goods that you consume. And it's made it very difficult to fight against. It's easy if you're just, you know, you're all the villages in a town ruled over by a king. You can see the oppression, it's right there in front of you. But capitalism sort of globalized the oppression and spread it out so distantly that it's difficult to really organize against. This is why I think if we are ever to move past capitalism, it would have to be sort of a simultaneous global movement. And that's why social justice is so important to me, because it sort of erases barriers between people using empathy. If you can get, you know, native-born people to sympathize with immigrants who are really in the same economic boat that they are, you know, if you can get men to empathize with women, you know, people of all races to empathize with each other, etc., then you can get them all on the same economic team as well. Well, I want to make clear here, I'm not just using it as a means to an end. I'm not like, yeah, I'll support gay marriage because I want that fight to be over so we can have the real, you know, economic fight. I'm not saying that. I think, you know, even within capitalism, ignoring the economic aspects of it, it'd still be good to fight for all these social justice causes because they're worthwhile in and of themselves. You know, there's sometimes a little bit of dissension among leftists over whether or not, you know, social justice is, quote, worth it. Like, you know, should we spend our time, you know, talking about this because, of course, that problem will go away if we just get rid of capitalism. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think they're all really just reflections of the same problem, which is just a lack of empathy causing people to want to rule over other people. This is why I usually script videos, by the way, because I go off the rails and end up trying to talk about everything at once. Right, more questions. So you've said a few times that Jen is pretty much not involved in the YouTube content. Is that just a joke, or are you just taking the piss out of Jen in a friendly way? That's from Mikey there. Jen did a thumbnail for the last video, which now hopefully that's her job and she does the rest of the thumbnails, but we'll see. But no, Jen is a lot more involved in our Friday Twitch stream. The reason that the YouTube channel is called Shaun and Jen is because she used to be involved in the YouTube content, but then she got kind of busy for a while last year and then couldn't carry on with that, so I just sort of took it over by myself. And then completely unrelated to that, that's where we really took off, you know. So we were both in the videos and we got about 10 or 20 views on average, and then Jen went, and then we started getting thousands of views on average. Now, is that related? I don't know. Who's to say, eh? What are a few of your all-time favourite books? Or books that have had the most influence on your worldview? To make it fun, at least one fiction and one non-fiction, please. From Alvy. I always get made fun of when I say my favourite book, which is Ulysses by James Joyce, because people think I'm just trying to be clever by saying my favourite book is what's considered one of the greatest novels of all time. But it's not. I like it. It's my favourite book, and everyone can leave me alone, frankly. Now, my favourite non-fiction book that I own, and one of my favourite books of all time, is a photo book called City of Darkness, which details life inside Kowloon Walled City. And if you don't know what that is, you should go and read the Wikipedia page on it, because it's absolutely fascinating. Why is it that the people you respond to in your videos often seem so much more interested in winning than learning or growing? Well, basically, it's not in their financial interests to learn or grow. If you look at someone like Bearing, say, he's got a lot more subscribers than he gets video views. It's because not all of his subs watch his videos, obviously, because they grew up. Like, his target audience is sort of a revolving door of people who are at a certain mentality, shall we say, and he has to keep pandering to that, because it's very hard to take what Bearing does and grow it, make it more mature. So he just has to keep targeting the exact same sort of middle teenage, I'm very clever and everyone else is dumb sort of mentality. And it's in his financial interest to do that. Like, he can't stop or he'll not be able to pay his rent, which is another problem with capitalism, ultimately. Yeah. CP Phasor says, do you reckon you'll do videos on any more commentary YouTubers apart from Leafy? Some of them can be reactionary, or at least opinionated at times, and I feel like I've produced an interesting series of projects. Yeah, I could do that. I haven't actually looked into anyone else other than Leafy, but I've had quite a few names suggested to me, so that could certainly be an upcoming video or series of videos. I'll need to look into them. Someone actually who hears this, just send me like a list of them. Send me like, the 5 biggest ones. This is how I'm actually shilling for help in my own Q&A video. Right. Milk says, have you ever smoked weed? Possibly twice. Never intentionally, actually, but there have been a couple of times where weed's been in the room and I've gotten so drunk that I can't remember what I did. So maybe I have, I can't remember. Is it okay for non-Liverpool natives to use the term Scouser? Yeah, I don't see why not. I've never had any issue with it. I mean, Scouse isn't even from Liverpool, really, so we kind of nicked that from somewhere else to begin with, as we do. So yeah, go nuts. Are you actually a skeleton? Says Bert Lurkling. Partially, although aren't we all? Someone else who's anonymous asks, do you think the anti-SJW community in general is right, or at least almost gets it about any issue? Well, I think they almost get a lot of things. They identify real problems, but then come to the wrong conclusions. For instance, they look at, say, the migrant crisis and see all these problems associated with it, and then their conclusion is to, put up walls, deport people, things which I think will make it worse than it is now, And if you try and critique that and say, well, no, actually, that will make it worse, they say you're ignoring the problem. Because, of course, they have to have a monopoly on being the only ones who can see the problem. It's as if they think just by identifying that something is wrong, then they automatically know what to do to fix it. Would you ever do a video on Columbo? I love the show, but wonder if there's anything deeper there to analyse. From Ethan. I love Columbo. I think it's a great twist on the classic murder mystery format. I really like the character. I like that he's like some working class bum, and all of his cases involve murderers who are much better off than him and think they're a lot smarter than him. And it's very formulaic, of course, and it's occasionally a little bit contrived in its logic, but it's typically really satisfying to watch. I don't know if I could do a video on it because I've basically just said all of my opinions about it right there. So there you go, that was my Columbo video. Another anonymous person says, how do you respond to people who come from the videos of your detractors who harass you and not actually watch your videos? Oh, by not caring about it, to be honest. That's obvious. You know, someone makes a video about me, then my average watch time and like bar are going to be shot to shit for a couple of weeks. But it's no issue, is it? Someone told me that YouTube weights all of this stuff just by interactions, so even dislikes aren't really a problem. It's not like they drop you out of the suggested videos or anything, so I'm not too bothered, to be honest. What's your approach to dealing with negative response videos? Do you just move on and ignore them, or something else? Well, I watched them just to make sure I didn't get caught out on something that was, obviously wrong. And then after that, I just ignore them. I'm not interested in getting into some video back and forth with, say, Sargon made one about my last video about him, where he sort of did a little riff tracks on my video and just watched it through, shouting that I'm stupid and so on. And there's nothing I can say back to that. I couldn't watch his video through and pause every time he said I'm an idiot and go, actually, it is you who's the idiot. It's maybe on Twitter every now and then I'll have a bit of a sassy day, but not in videos. Did you go to university? If so, what did you major in? Oh, we've got an American writing in, ladies and gentlemen. Thoughts on your college experience? I did go to university. I studied creative writing, although study is a bit of a stretch. I mainly was at university in name only. I didn't really attend all that much. I mainly just used the time to get really drunk for a couple of years. So it was pretty fun. All round, I'd highly recommend it. Waymoo asks, 1. Where are my shoelaces? 2. What happened to that response video you did to The Amazing Atheist? I thought it was great and I miss it. So your shoelaces are probably on your shoes. That's where I'd check first. The Amazing Atheist video, it's annoying that, because I caught him out on something really funny, but I elsewhere speculated that he was crazy or in some way mentally ill, which was wrong of me to do. I realise, regardless of how right or wrong I might be about that, I approached it in a very indelicate manner that sort of directly connected The Amazing Atheist's sort of horrible racist views to just any sort of mental illness. And I didn't want to do that because, of course, there's a lot of people out there who struggle with the mental health, and that doesn't automatically mean they're horrible, racist bastards. So a couple of people wrote in saying they were uncomfortable with that, and then after thinking about it, I realised I was as well. So I just took the video down, and I keep saying I'll re-edit it sometime, but yeah, I don't even want to look at it now, basically. Do you think the skeptic community will begin to break ranks on the anti-SJW stuff and start focusing on Republicans simply because of how easy a target the Trump administration is? I feel like someone looking for an easy target could do a weekly series debunking Trump for the next 4 years and not ever run out of material. Well, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? I feel like with our Tory politicians with Brexit, a lot of them would have sort of preferred Hillary to win. Because then they get an easy 4 more years complaining about all the evil SJW leftists being in charge of society, which they're still doing now, even though it doesn't really make any sense. Like, Trump got into office and is in power now, but they're still sitting around on YouTube complaining that a feminist said something stupid. And it's funny when you see one of them occasionally be like, "Ooh, wait until my subscribers get a load of me making fun of Trump. Oh, they'll see I'm not just some right-winger. I can go after the conservatives as well." Yeah, but do they? Not really. Do you think that the media calling white people racist has led to a rise in white nationalism, i.e. people are more willing to stand up for being white and therefore be racist to other people in a shocking turn of events? No, actually. I think the recent rise in white nationalism and sort of more open racism is more to do with the economic climate over the last decade. Of course, you get these periods occasionally under capitalism. That's one of the other problems with capitalism. There's boom and bust cycles, and that's normal. That's not an aberration. It's important to understand that in a capitalist system like we have, this happens. It has to, And when that happens, people start looking for solutions, and they don't always correctly identify the problem, and they come to the wrong conclusions. Like, it's easy to say, well, people are struggling to find work, and all these immigrants are coming over here taking all of our jobs. But that's not the problem, really. The problem is that you live in a system in which there is a scarcity of jobs, I was actually in a truck 10 years ago with my dad, who's a truck driver, and we were listening to a news story about the then very recent economic crash, and there was a lot of, quote, experts like ruminating over the extent of how bad this was. Like, is this a sort of economy ending crash, or is it one that we'll recover from fairly quickly? And while they were talking about it, my dad said to me, you watch now, over the next few years, everyone's going to become a lot more racist. And I said, why? And he said, well, when this happens, people start looking for someone to blame. And it's the most prescient thing he's ever said to me, and it's been completely borne out in reality. Killer Rhubarb, I think that's how you say that, says, why are anti-feminists so quick to dismiss the wage gap as just an average that doesn't take things into account? Of course it's an average, but those things it doesn't take into account could be inherently sexist, like why do women choose to take lower paying jobs? Is it because they want them, or because it's harder to get into STEM fields and programming? Yeah, of course. Well, anti-fems typically just look at everything legally. They say, well, we freed the slaves and we gave black people the vote, so now racism is pretty much over. Women have legal equality with men now, so of course there's no more issue, is that they sort of willfully can't see the systemic aspects of it. Like, you can remove the legal barriers for women getting into these professions, but that doesn't mean you remove the social barriers for women getting into those professions. If those professions are more likely to hire men than women, just based upon the fact that they're men, that's an issue, and it's not one that can be very easily solved legally, except for imposing quotas and the likes, which I don't think the anti-fems are much of a fan of, really. Do you think people should be held accountable for deciding not to get involved when someone they are associated with starts parroting white nationalist talking points, e.g. all the YouTubers who have collaborated with JonTron? That's from Cheeky there. I'm more concerned with holding accountable people who didn't just not get involved but came out in support of him. I mean, they're really who are at fault here. As for not getting involved, I think I certainly wouldn't blame someone for having a problem with someone avoiding that issue. I mean, white nationalism isn't something you really want to beat around the bush on, is it? It shouldn't be difficult to come out and say, I don't agree with white nationalism or racism. But apparently, that's where we are in 2017, in the current year. Who is your favourite Roman emperor, and why is it Caligula? Signed, Caligula. Well, it's not Caligula, because he was an insane murderer. My favourite Roman emperor is Claudius, who is very interesting, and everyone should go read about on Wikipedia. I won't talk about Claudius for too long, and I could, because he's very interesting. But basically, he was part of Augustus, that's the first emperor of Rome's royal family, and he had some sort of medical issue which modern historians think is like cerebral palsy or Tourette's or something like that. He struggled to speak, and he walked with a limp, and his family sort of kept him out of the limelight and didn't really let the public see him. So he just became a scholar, and he read a lot. And then after Caligula really went off the deep end and declared himself a god, and everyone just figured it would be better to kill him, there was a coup, and they killed Caligula and his whole family. and the only one that they left alive was Claudius, who they declared the emperor because, of course, the troops still needed an emperor to be on the throne so that they could get paid. They didn't want to put the Senate back in charge and then they, dissolve all of the troops' power. So Claudius just sort of randomly ended up as the emperor, and everyone thought, oh god, we've got a mad fool as an emperor. But he actually turned out to be a really capable administrator. It was like a big surprise twist. If anyone's ever watched Game of Thrones, I don't know if you've ever heard of that show, Game of Thrones. The character of Tyrion Lannister is based rather heavily on Claudius, as Joffrey is on Caligula, I believe. What are some of your interests outside of making video? I believe you mentioned playing Warcraft and liking action movies. That's from Shadow the Linkin Park Hog 666. Now I've paired this one with another question to come at the end of the video. Hi Shaun, I wanted to know your thoughts on the current World of Warcraft expansion. Are you a fan of the Demon Hunter class? Thoughts on Illidan, characters being killed off, Gul'dan, etc. From Gabby. Now I put this one at the end because if I did this one first, that everyone had clicked the video off. I do play Warcraft on and off. I can't consistently play it. It can't hold me for that long. I play for a couple of weeks every few months, pretty much, just to see all the new stuff that's in the game. I'm not like a progression raider or something. The current expansion made a lot of improvements over the last expansion. The last one, Draenor, is the worst the game's ever been by a long shot. This one fixed a lot of those problems, but carried on a lot of those problems. The class halls are a major improvement over the garrison of the last expansion, which was like the main reason it was rubbish. Demon Hunters, I've only played through the start area. They seem fine. I don't know, I don't have much to say about this. Illidan, well, of course, that's where they've really went wrong, story-wise. Like, they got rid of Thrall, who was, for the uninitiated, Thrall was like the Mary Sue of Chris Metzen within the World of Warcraft. He was Orc Jesus, he typically gets referred to as, and was responsible or involved with every single major plot element in the entire game, and would turn up when your raid group had just finished fighting a boss and he'd get the last kill in, or you'd be fighting another major lore character and then the game would just make you lose so that Thrall could come and save you. And everyone hated Thrall, so they just sort of benched him. But now they've replaced him with Illidan, who was always an interesting character, in that he was pretty much just some average elf who was really incredibly driven. And now they've made him Elf Jesus, who was predestined to blah 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 blah. And it's all incredibly boring and contrived. Like, for what a mess Warcraft's story is, there are occasionally good elements to it, and Illidan's story was one of those, and now they've ruined it. As for the characters who have been killed off, I think that was good. It gave a sense of actual threat to the antagonists of this expansion. I mean, the orcs in the last expansion, they didn't kill anyone, I don't think, apart from characters who had just been introduced. They were immediately beaten. But in this one, the Legion turn up and kill off a whole bunch of named lore characters. It's like, oh, actually, this is a threat this time. So that was... no one's still here, are they? So, okay, Gabby, since you're the only person who's still listening at this point, thanks a lot for that question. Thanks a lot to everyone else who asked questions. I couldn't put them all in, but any that I didn't answer here, I'll have a go at answering on Curious Cat. So, thanks a lot, everyone, and I'll see you next time.